Doug Simon from Tredas in Lincoln, Nebraska is our corn and soybean market analyst this week. The United States produced more than 15.1 billion bushels of corn in 2016. It'll export about 15% of that, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, with a healthy chunk going to Japan and Mexico. For years, Japan was the largest buyer of U.S. corn, but Mexico narrowly gained the top spot in 2015. The market across the southern border is in focus now, as the North American Free Trade Agreement is in the spotlight. If the relationship between the U.S. and Mexico deteriorates, recent reports indicate Mexico would look to supply in South America. We talked with Doug Wednesday afternoon about production in Argentina and Brazil, recent market price movements, and Mexico's import market for U.S. corn.
Well, Mexico imports about 500 million bushels of corn, and Japan also imports about 500 million bushels. Those are our two largest importers, and they import almost half of the corn that we export. So this deal with Mexico is important because they import about a quarter of our corn.
The talk now is, well, if they don't go to the U.S., they'll go to South America and look at Brazil and Argentina. Can you explain the logistics of how that would happen?
Well, last year, Brazil lost about 18 million metric tons in their safrinha crop, and so they don't have the exportable supplies available early or even, probably this year between them and Argentina. So even though they could maybe long-term replace the U.S., gradually over time, it's not something you would expect right away just because they don't have the supplies that are available or that are surplus to do that.
Is there a big price difference when you talk about U.S. versus South America?
They're, right now, they maybe have a slight advantage on us, but when you look at the world numbers on, actually like wheat, we've kind of become less competitive here just more recently on hard red winter wheat, but everybody else is fairly competitive. But on the corn side, we're all pretty, fairly competitive right now.
Staying down in South America, what do we know about harvest results?
When you look at the pace down there, really they're maybe a little bit ahead of pace in Mato Grosso and soybeans, but everywhere is pretty much on pace on the harvesting side in both Brazil, Argentina. The only thing that's really kind of ahead of pace is the planting that's going on in Brazil with their safrinha crop, or that second crop of corn, which was a disaster last year.
When those crops are coming online now, will they start to eat into U.S. exports?
Well, they definitely are going to come into the marketplace. But when you look at like our corn exports at this point, we're 60% ahead where we were last year. We're about 20% ahead of last year on the soybean side. I think wheat were about 40% ahead of last year. So those exports that we have coming out of this country are very good. And because they have their commitments already made on a lot of their corn, they're not going to be, they'll supplant maybe a little bit of ours, but really their commitments are already made.
Coming back to the U.S., and we're taping on Wednesday afternoon. The USDA is meeting for their forum Thursday and Friday. The talk is going to be acres, obviously, or at least some of the talk. What are your expectations for planted acres this spring?
Well, I think it all goes back to wheat. We've had a big drop in wheat price, and you look at wheat acres, we're around maybe 32 million acres on the winter wheat, which are down about half from where we were in 1985, and you look at, we weren't this low in wheat acres since like 1908 when my grandfather was born. So it's been a long time that we've been this low, but so where are those 4 to 5 million acres of extra wheat going to go? Well, there's a lot of talk that they're going to go to soybeans. We may pick up another 4 million acres of soybeans. You look at Kansas was a big loser of wheat, and soybeans seem to work there. There'll be probably some loss up in the Dakotas and Montana on spring wheat, some of the other wheats, but maybe the stuff will go to other minor feed grains. But the big question is how much there's talk about losing corn acres just because of the fact that that soybean to corn ratio is attracted to the soybean side of it. So we lose, maybe go from 94 million acres down to 92, 91. I saw numbers earlier in the year when corn was back at 375 that we'd go down to 88. That's all going to be in flux. It's going to depend on what happens with weather here during March and April as we go. How dry is it? How fast we plant? If it's dry, we tend to plant a little bit quicker, plant more corn. But all in all, I would think corn acres are going to be somewhere down around 91 million acres. Beans up somewhere up in that 87 to 88 million acre range would be my guess.
Analyze for me the recent price movements we've seen in corn and soybeans.
Well, I said 375 D's corn. We had that back in the October-November period, and we've rallied here to $4. We've had almost a 25-cent rally. If you look back at the harvest lows and the old crop corn, we were down. We've rallied almost 50 cents on that, so we've had pretty significant rallies. As that's happened in the old crop corn, our basis levels have widened because there was a lot of corn. When you look at the U.S. supplies, we've had a big increase in carryover. It's not as big as increase in the world numbers on both the corn and the beans. The same case in the soybeans. So even though we've had these nice rallies, our basis levels have fallen off. So looking forward on the old crop, there's a lot of corn I think that needs to be moved. We're kind of looking at hedging remaining bushels that we haven't sold from earlier and trying to lock in that carry that's in there to May and July. And we think that there'll be some basis opportunities as you move into that April-May period. people are going to be going to the fields and farmer supplies start to dwindle. Should be some opportunities on both, I think, old crop corn and beans. But then if you look forward at new crop corn, we're sitting near $4. We were sitting just over $4 last week. When you look at that, that has become profitable. Earlier, people were just focusing on beans and saying that's why we're going to shift to more beans because of profitability there. So we've got some good, I think, opportunities on new crop corn to lock in what I would consider to be profit margins, especially when you look at that at $4 and you look at March and May and July carry into next year, which puts you at $4.10 to $4.20 to $4.30, and then look at maybe better basis levels next year because maybe not quite a big crop. So I think those are good numbers to work with.
Can you give me an idea of where the funds are at right now in corn and soybeans?
On the corn and the soybean side, both, they're long. The managed money funds on the corn side are long about 85,000 contracts. On the bean side, they're long about 170,000 contracts. Last year at this time, the funds were short both the corn and the beans, and so there's been a lot of buying that's pushed this market higher on the corn side and on the bean side. So when they get to be that long, it gives you more, I think, market risk to the downside, or the things run out of steam to the upside. It gives you definitely cause for concern there.